Hey everybody, welcome to Joe's Minibike Reunion. It's podcast number 5, podcast cinco, and we're here with the folks from FNB Racing, Brian and Frank. Thanks for rolling over.
How you doing? Thank you for having us.
Hey, very excited to have you here. Really excited. Eva one, Ed, thank you for joining us.
No problem.
Now you're going to be sharing a mic with Brian. I noticed, Ed, a couple things, and I want to get to you first, as I always do, because I'm so excited about. Well, the first thing is the Powell. Now, last time, I knew that you had a full dance card, and I totally get it. In fact, we even talked about that. Sometimes people just layer too much on you. Hey, Ed, build my engine, build my bike.
I can't get away from that. I just can't get away from that.
That's a compliment. As I said, all these guys they just want a little piece of you.
I just want to work on my own stuff.
So I'm gonna delay that a little bit with that Powell. And the Powell, I kind of feel like that's a bike that I know that you have a little bit more of an association with too, because you knew the origin of that bike through Minibike Paul.
Yeah, I did a couple, put something together for him. And what do you do, like three engines, I think, maybe?
Yeah. Well, that
Something
Powell,
like
that Powell particularly was one that he received from the family, the Powell family. Mm-hmm. It came with a variety of things. He gave me a poster. There's 2 CDs that he gave me, but they won't play on my contemporary Mac. You can only play them on a PC.
Right.
But there's some more information on it. But it came with, as you see, the frame's already painted. Just about all the parts that needed for that bike, besides the engine and everything else. It's all there in that box. And I wanted Ed to assemble it because we're trying to get a little bit of a show at SEMA this year. And part of the plan is to have that Challenger, that Powell Challenger, that raw mini bike, that Frankenstein, that Jake Moe is building, and then hopefully another one for a company that we've been working with, CRC, to help promote Stay Lube, which is that brand that's been around for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And we're excited about having those 3 bikes there, Ed. So as I understand it, we may have a deal. You'll think about assembling the bike and putting it together? Or?
I'll take it home.
Thank you.
But you know what that means.
That's a theme-built bike, or is it going to be just something for them?
Frank, I have to give Ed, in most cases, like, you know what I'm looking for, but do it your way. With this one, I think that one deserves, because they're in there, I think that deserves close to a nut and bolt as we can.
Right.
It's just one of those bikes, isn't it, Ed?
Yeah, that's the same kind Minibike Paul wanted with his.
Yeah, and I want to be true to that, because I leaned on Paul to buy that bike. Mm-hmm. When I have the chance, whether it's like I just talked to James up in Newhall, purchased a couple bikes from him in the past, or Minibike Paul. This would have been my second bike. Certain guys have cool bikes, and it's tough to pry bikes away. Like
right.
I've got some bikes back here, and I don't want to give any of my stuff away. And if you do, you want it to go to the right person. So knowing this bike would get some good notoriety, I think it's deserved, because Paul really turned me on to a nice bike there. So thank you. I'm looking forward to...
You're welcome.
Yeah. Ed, some folks have asked me about that Challenger. The shifter is the thing that gets the most attention. Talk a little bit about how that mechanism worked on that bike, would you?
It just changes the ratio on the belt.
So you're taking off, you're up to 25 miles an hour, you're pulling that...
Yeah, it makes it tighter on the front, and it changes the ratio, makes it taller and skinnier.
Okay. Well, I don't know too much about them. That's why I was curious about them. Those bikes seem to be
It's like
popular.
a torque converter.
Yeah, okay. A torque converter?
Yeah.
Well, torque converters aside, I noticed you brought the dog. What's happening with Loca?
Loca got sick. She's been sick for like a week, but she's doing better.
You brought her to the vet over the holidays, or?
Yeah, $330 worth.
Well,
That was money I could have bought him anybody.
Yeah.
Hey, the dog looks good. We hope it gets better. It's hanging out there
she's-
now. Linda brought some special water, so.
Yeah, she's eating and drinking now, so I think she'll be better.
Wind Bear's popping up pretty soon. Isn't it Father's Day, or is it upcoming?
Yeah, it's Father's Day. Thursday, or is it Friday? Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You can show up Thursday.
Have you decided to make plans there?
Man, the only way I could go is if I flew to Philadelphia, which is cheaper than flying to Pittsburgh.
Sure.
Because usually you fly to Pittsburgh. But if you fly to Philadelphia, the flights are cheaper. But then you got to rent a car. You got to put all this together on the computer at certain times, which is hard.
Yep.
because you can only get the car at a certain time. You can only get the flights, the list of flights they have at a certain time. And then you got to worry about the hotel.
So it sounded like a no at this point, huh?
No, I'm still work on it because my buddy, Custom Cart Kid,
Yeah.
he hit me up, and I did that Jack Spittler bike, painted it for him, and we want to see each other one more time.
Yeah, and if you need help going online, like I just had to book a flight. Someone had asked me, through this gig with Roadkill, when we go do an event, they pay for my stuff. They book my flight and everything. And one of the gals had asked me if she could help me out, and I was like, please. Well, I got my confirmation this morning. It was like Delta Junior baby plane. It's like, fuck that. It's like I got to go on a real plane. And then I started looking at the hotel, and I'm at a lodge somewhere when everybody else is at the Fairfield Inn right across the street from the Kansas City Speedway. So it's like it's gonna be a pain in the ass. I'm gonna be on a shitty plane. I'm gonna get killed. So I went and did it myself. I think that's what you're getting at. It is complicated to make all those.
Last year was weird because I flew into Pittsburgh and no, I'm sorry, Altoona.
Altoona, PA, sure. Yeah.
And then my friend picked me up, and we drove to Wimber.
Yeah. You need that. You need that VIP
then
pickup.
He had to drive me all the way back to Altoona. It was like 2 hours maybe. And I get on this plane, and it stops at this little dinky airport in Wimber to pick people up.
Yeah, and you drove all the way over there for nothing?
Yeah. And then it flew from the Wimber to Pittsburgh. And why can't I get this online,
Yeah. Well, it's complicated. When you're going in and out of those little towns, you should show up. You showing up there would be a big thing. I know it's a big thing when you come on these podcasts or when you show up at the events, and I'm sure a lot of guys would like to see you. So if any of you guys from the old minibikes.com website, and who's the guy who's in charge of that?
Drew,
hook him up. Would you see if we can?
He me up the first time.
Yeah, do it again, Drew. Come on. The event's growing. If I had your money over there, I'd burn mine. Set up Ed. Set him at least a car at the airport. Help him out with some flights, maybe some airline suggestions, and if there's any, because I looked on the site, there's a lot of people going to that event.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Yeah,
because it's like just a big whole area you can ride, and then there's like a couple trails you can ride up in the mountains, and it's pretty nice.
Yeah, so you
got a little
should get up
there, like a canteen or whatever you want to call it, where you could get food and you could take a shower in there.
Yep.
For all the campers that camp out there, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's unlike
like a little vacation.
Oh, it's fun.
Frank, to that point, I saw a lot of folks that really were planning their vacation around that. But hey, Wimber aside, let's face it, it's the biggest event, and it has the ability to camp and ride, all the things that we just. It's ironic that we don't do that here. But, here we are, the God's country, and you can't fucking ride a mini bike anywhere, let alone spend the night doing things with them. But we'll change that. But I did want to bring it up because it is appropriate and it is a good event. If you want more information on that, you can go to oldminibikes.com and go to events or Google it or just go look at all the videos on YouTube. But Ed, look, on the dog's going to be fine. If you show up at Wimber, that event will be fine. And I wanted to make sure we included you tonight again in the garage because, you know the history with Brian and Frank, and I thought it'd be nice to have you eavesdrop in. So sit along the.
Yeah, we're old rivals.
Yeah. Yeah, good in a good way, right?
Oh yeah.
It was all fun for me, but sometimes it got a little too serious.
It's racing. It's racing. When they get down to it, people want to race. So you'd be sharing a microphone with Brian at least through the first half of this because we have a cooperative here with that microphone. So if you guys have any grudges that go back, cut them off because you got to share that microphone and be fair.
No grudges whatsoever.
It was all in fun.
Good
Many
stuff.
Years ago now.
Yeah, man.
I can't believe how long it's been already.
It's crazy.
Let's talk about that because there's a couple things. It's very obvious that you two both were in the scene.
My brother was in it a lot longer than I was. He actually brought me into it. I believe we were discussing this the other day. I think around 2010. 10.
Yeah, the tail end of 10.
Yeah, and when he brought me into it, we just basically, he said, hey bro, can we do this? Can we do this? Can we do this? And it kept getting bigger and bigger because people, like you said, everybody wants a header. Everybody wants something custom done, and finding exactly what they need, and they couldn't get it, and so we started building headers and gas tanks and catch cans and so on, and here we are today.
Yeah.
Before we get into that part of it, which is obviously what guys really want to know, we've got some parts laid out here. In fact, we were talking about it a little earlier. We have everything from the stage 1 to the stage 3 pipes. We've got catch cans. We've got complete motors. But before we get into where you guys are now, and how exciting it has to be for you guys to wake up each day and be able to do this, in addition to the other things that you're into. But before we get there, everybody's really curious about, before that, the young days, the first mini bikes, the first experiences you guys had with those. You were an older brother, Frank, so was it you that got Brian into it? What was your first bike, and when did it all start for you?
No, I think ours was more or less dirt bikes back way in the days, and I did start riding earlier on in the days before my brother did, and then he got, I remember his first bike, I believe, was an old Yamaha YZ80, and that little thing just ripped.
Yes.
And he'd go out there and just tear it up. And
what did you have? What was your first bike?
My first bike was a Yamaha RD100.
RD100.
Okay.
That's right.
It was a dual sport.
Yeah,
And,
I've got a DT80 at the other side of that wall there, a 1980. But what great bikes to start with. So you had that bike, and then you had the 80?
I had the YZ80. It was a reed motor. I think that was the first year monoshock for Yamaha. And that was the biggest difference, that
1978, I believe.
And how old were you at the time, Brian?
Oh man, fourth grade I was already ripping 10.
Ah,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
So was it a result of the fact that your big brother had a bike and he brought you along, or were you into it equally?
It was a plus having all of us riding, but for me it was more about the control and the speed. It started off at a young age for me.
Sure. Like the first time you got on that bike and you ripped that throttle, you were hooked kind
And
of
it was
thing?
long before that. We were racing our big
The
wheels.
big wheels.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, we go
Up
way
and down
back.
the block.
Oh.
So
So was it the big wheels? Really? Was
Big
that?
wheels, the green machines.
green machines. Yeah.
Back in the days.
So what would you do with those? How would you modify those?
We'd ride them until the front wheels had holes in them.
Right, the plastic ones, right?
Yeah.
That was the deal. They had that stupid brake.
Yeah.
Well, I don't remember
You
the.
shift like
you
this
turn.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, it was drifting. That was the first version of. Ed, do you remember the big wheels?
Yep.
I just can't see you on a freaking big wheel.
No, I was already too old for a big wheel when they came out.
Really? Hey, what if we
So-
just put that maybe right in front of you? Because we're both, there probably work there. So you're not a big wheel guy, Ed?
No, I was too big.
So now the modern day big wheels, you probably get guys calling trying to put these engines on
Oh,
these
yeah.
freaking big wheels that they have out there now, right?
Yeah, they build trikes and everything now, like legit trikes. And
What kind of engines are they slinging in those things?
same
This-
thing,
this
Predators.
stuff?
Okay, so they're building modified 6.5 horsepower Predators and going how fast?
And drifting, drifting, you're not going that fast. Drifting is about sliding through a turn and having that whole feeling of a controlled slide. And that's what they do. And they'll actually take and they'll put PVC tubing on a slick tire that's flat and then air it up and then be able to drift on because that plastic's just going to slide.
With minimal power.
Yeah.
So you don't need a monster really for that.
Yeah, I'm so glad that those big wheels, those hopped up big wheels took over because we were going down a slippery path. It's like I was okay with the bar stool racers. Okay, although you knew that was death on a seat, but then they started racing these plastic Barbie cars. You see these guys racing them now?
I've seen that.
So it was starting to really get crazy. So at least with those three wheelers, those have that whole drifting element, and drifting's really popular. So dirt bikes was it, and then how did that progress then? How did that get to going fast on mini bikes?
Scooters.
Yeah, I mean, it transitioned. I've always been into mini bikes too, so, but then that transitioned over into bigger dirt bikes and, street bikes and whatnot.
go-karts
later on.
even
Oh,
before
yeah.
mini bikes,
We had go-karts and
Is that your agent, Ed?
that's VIP.
Hey, maybe it's the old
Yeah.
minibike.com guys
Right.
trying to book you for a
Hooking
Wimber.
you up.
Yep. Tell them that Joe will take care of it. Tell them.
Man, it only ran once.
Uh-oh, that's probably the bill collector then.
Too late for that.
All right, so in the middle of getting turned on with the dirt bikes and then having a little fun with
Go-karts.
go-karts and mixing in a little bit of now going fast on the streets at LA. I'm trying to get
Yeah, so we could fast forward to 2000, Charles mentioned it. I met Charles in August of 2004, I want to believe.
Okay.
So prior to that, I think I jumped in probably in 02, 03 with a flathead, and like my brother does now, he ports the majority of the heads for us and the ones we sell. So I remember bringing him a Raptor 3 I had, and I was building that Raptor a few years before I met Charles, and I think we were working at Circuit City or something at that time.
Yeah.
And we ported that right there at his work, and it was the first mod I did to that one, and I'd already had a dyno cam for it and a couple other ARC products.
Street Cheetah.
Yeah, I had a cam, they call it the Street Cheater cam.
What size cam was that? Do you remember?
I don't remember the profile on it, but all I knew was it wasn't stock.
Sure.
So
Yep.
we went with that. I forget what header we had back then, but anyways, I wound up running into Charles shortly after that. We talk on the phone, and I'm explaining to him about my flathead and whatnot, and he tells me, oh, that you need to do this, that, and the other. And from that point on, I knew, that I was going to do what I wanted. So, and that's what we did. We modified that one as much as I could. They call them limited modifieds in the karting world. So I got up to that stage, and I believe I got that one to go about 62 miles an hour with me on it, a flathead, a Raptor 3.
And that was... What were you weighing at that time?
Oh...
Because I think he was a couple 100 pounds. Wasn't Charles when he was fooling around at that time? Riding the bikes?
When I met Charles, he's about 270.
Oh, okay.
I was probably 220. So... But we hadn't raced at that point, and we got that one going, and that was on a Cat. That was on a 300X Cat. I had that flathead in.
Okay.
Wound up selling that one, and then moved forward from that. I bought my first overhead cam motor, which was a Subaru Robin.
Right.
Was a EX17. It's a 6 horsepower, and that one there were no parts for it. Had my brother make a header for that. Had that head ported. I had Tim grind the base circles on that cam, bump the timing, change the carb. There was an outfit that used to make parts for the Subarus. I want to call them Exotic Toys. I think that was the name of them back then.
It was kind of an odd bird, that Subaru. It wasn't as if the place were littered with parts for that, right?
No. That's why we did a lot of one-off stuff. Like Charles had mentioned, back then, you couldn't just go online.
You couldn't go into a store and buy something for it.
No. So I made my own timing key.
Wow.
Like I said, we ground the base circles on that cam before anything was really available for them. And I got that one to go almost 66 with me on it, So we went far with that, and then I got my first 200 GX 200. I want to say in probably 05, and then from then on, that was it. That's the first time I hit the LA street scene out on Mansville, and that was it. It just took off from there, and that's how it transitioned up to that point till about 2005.
So how did you transition into that group? Like, were you a guy rolling up from the outside? Did you know those guys? It's not like you lived there, right, at the time?
No.
Yeah.
No. So
you come showing up with your skills and your bike and yourself. How did that go?
Relatively new. I mean, to that whole scene. For me, it was going out and finding competition. That's what it's always been for me.
And was that Charles?
He was one of them that was out there. But then once you get out there, you see it's a huge handful.
Yeah.
And then other faces start to come in, and it becomes addictive, and like anything else growing up, it became addictive and
competitive.
Competitive. Like Ed said, some people take it more serious than others, especially when you're on the losing end on it.
Yeah.
Every week.
Yeah, our rivalry was weekly. It was weekly. It was good, and we did a lot of shit talking back and forth on OMB for a long time.
Yeah, that was like the longest thread on there.
Yeah, we blew it all up.
LA drag spot.
Yeah.
Sure was for a long time.
You're part of that clique. You're out there trying to go fast. You've got your own ideas. You're doing as much work as you can. You're there week in, week out. No one's making any money at that time, right?
No.
Right?
Really.
It's not a money thing. We're just trying to
Racing
go fast, right?
Yep.
For me, it was at that time. There were crews out there racing for money.
How'd that work? Is there particular not everybody knew about it Did everybody know about it? Was it open to anybody? You had to be a part of the clique to actually be a part of the racing?
I think if you just
For
rolled
money?
up, I mean, there was different guys. I mean, you know, Charles is probably notably one of the pioneers, right, if you will. But there were guys before him also, you know, that were racing mini bikes before Charles.
So how'd that go down, Ed? You show up, you think you got a fast mini bike? You know, you're like
I
fresh
showed
meat
up
rolling
later.
down there, right?
I showed up on Anna Street.
2011?
Yeah, somewhere around there maybe.
And what kind of, like, how does it work money-wise? What were some of
I
the-
never raced for money.
But the guys who did, what's the typical bet? Were these guys $100?
$100, $50,
Yeah,
100
okay.
bucks.
Chicken dinner.
Chicken dinners.
So it still really wasn't a
Louisiana
money
fried
thing, then,
chicken
right? It was
dinners.
just more for bragging rights.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was usually the guys would go back and
Ronald
forth,
was the
back
one
and
always
forth,
wanting
back
to
and
bet
forth
for money.
hours and hours and hours before anybody would race, and then you get it off the truck, and then my bike broke, and it was fun.
It's like
is
Street
what it was.
Outlaws.
Yeah,
Now, when you watch
you
that
know?
TV
It
show.
was
where-
worse than Street Outlaws.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was similar, for
Yeah.
sure.
yeah.
So the rivalry, it sounds like, because even with Charles, you know, obviously there's a little back and forth and there's a lot of verbal ball busting. But when it's all said
Part
and
of
done,
racing.
yeah, it's all said and done. It wasn't as if anybody was getting hit over the head with a socket wrench, right?
Minibike, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it still had that competitive flair, and that, you know, that's I think what keeps it going. So I'm trying to get now to a place where it goes from having fun racing, showing up, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. When's it go to, you know what? I'm building my own shit. I'm gonna get with my brother. Or maybe you guys are having a conversation. How does this go down where we go from racing and having fun to maybe trying to make this a go? How did like the spirit of F&B pop up? Was it your idea? Was it your idea, Frank? How did that work?
I think it was something that was kind of a mutual thing, because my brother would ask me to build headers for different people. Hey, bro, this guy wants a header, that guy wants a header, and I'd start building up a whole bunch of them. And then once you did that, people wanted to know where it came from. So then at that point, I think is when I said, well, we need to label this and put a brand on it, because nobody knows who it is unless they know you. And then my brother brought me into the scene. We went out to Anna Street. That was the first street I ever went on. Went out to Anna Street, and my son is a very small guy, a very small kid at the time, and he'd go out there and he wasn't scared of the bikes. I'd put him on anything. I don't care how fast it was. I'd put him on it, and he would go. Now that's not to be said that he could jump on a junior dragster motor and whatever back in the days, but that's where it got started. We went to Anna, and people wanted headers, and then so we just labeled it.
I got Ed's dog tearing up a bottle. Ed, go tend to your little dog there. Just for a second, I thought it was the.
He's got a toy over there.
Yeah, it's.
So that's
Unfortunately, it's not glass. Got it. So, and it was the headers. That was it. Be guys like your header that your brother built for your bike.
It was pretty accurate, you know. Going back, even touching on that a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, our headers started off as something that was very
Pre-bent.
generic, you
Okay.
know, and
Yeah, just like the one angle, the one
Yeah.
right,
one turn.
single stage
Yeah.
braced setups, and they worked.
Sure.
You know, and I showed them to my brother, and
They worked in the extent that it sounded much better.
yeah,
Oh. Of
It
course.
looked much better, right? It's kind of like you had a custom deal, but it felt like it went a little faster too, didn't it?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. Usually the jetting played in there too.
sure, more so than probably the pipe, but it was the whole thing, wasn't it?
So then we sold them, you know, at that rate, and then of course I would tell them, you know, I'll jet your bike for you, and it started to excel from there. Just minor mods, and then it turned into bigger things, and especially head porting. My brother does all the porting for everything we do, you know, as far as head work from mild to wild heads, and that was another thing that took off. And I mean, you know, you mentioned catch cans and gas tanks, all those little things just started to all click in with, like my brother said, it was mutual. It wasn't even really a matter of discussing it. It was,
We need this. Let's make one.
Yeah.
it just sort of happened.
you knew, right?
Yeah.
You knew.
Yeah.
Come on back in. Eddie's dog okay?
Yeah.
I'm
Good.
holding the mic for you. Come here.
Just turn it on.
Yeah, just I thought it was the fiberglass electric car he was chewing on.
Oh.
It's like, Jesus Christ, that's all I need. Ed, we were just talking about how this all evolved, and it's funny because it's almost true to cars. One of the first things you do is like, okay, the exhaust. I gotta change the exhaust. Got to change the wheels. Like certain things that you wanted to do, but with mini bikes, it was the stage one pipe. Anything was better than the stock pipe,
Exhaust
right?
and an air cleaner. The first things you do.
Exhaust and air cleaner, and then you found out that then it got into the tuning. All right, so we started to begin this whole. Now we're tuning. We used to tie them up on a rope to a porch and full throttle and right and turn and then turn it back, right?
Lean them out, yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, you went a little bit further. So, what were some of the cool things that you guys were doing that gave you that reputation? Like, hey, Brian and Frank, they'll hook you up. They got the pipes. They can tune the carb. They got this little deal with the air cleaner. You're starting to build a little bit of a reputation outside of your inner circle, right?
Right.
When did it start to get to the point where you guys were like being talked about and that people were seeking you out? When did you notice that shit was happening?
It's crazy because me and Ed, we raced several times, and I was racing other people at that time too, but I think notably,
Edwin, the whole group of people got together and started racing.
And we even started doing the dirt thing with you. We went out to Ventura.
Yep.
We were racing with Guardrail. I have a plaque that year. I think that was in 05.
It's hard. I can't remember.
No,
Yeah, I
maybe it
can't
was
remember
2010. I'm
yesterday.
sorry, but at any rate, we started playing with the dirt stuff, but as far as the notoriety, I again, it's one of those things that just kind of happened. The scene just started to slow down. You had a few fast motors, and you'd go out there every weekend, and there wouldn't be any races. You'd stay around and you'd wait for hours on end for one race, and then the guy's bike would break. I think my brother mentioned that earlier. So I decided, you know what? Let's build some reliable gas motors, like we touched on earlier with the Grom.
Yeah.
We wanted to put together something that was gonna, be fast, but not outrageously fast.
And dependable.
Right.
Right.
And start putting together tournaments and that's
have
when
fun. Stop breaking
Yeah.
stuff. Have
Right.
fun.
Did that Predator engine was that
This was before the Predator.
okay?
Yeah.
We were doing clones, Harbor Freight at the time. I think their hot one was a central machine motor, and then they had Greyhounds. They had,
Vans.
Liffin was the
Liffin.
one.
Talked about that on the show. So did you guys dabble in all with the traditional Briggs and Tecumsehs, or you guys didn't have much of a time with those engines?
Well, like I said, my first hop-up motor was a Raptor 3.
Okay,
It was
Briggs.
a Briggs,
Yeah.
5-horse, and that ended up with a Tillotson on it and a header and a different cam and an ARC rod. The same stuff we're doing with this now.
Yep.
Because those parts were available for the flatheads back then. The karting world was already big back then.
So talk a little bit about this engine that you brought. Walk us through. And this have one of these trick manual clutches on there?
That's a 2-disc bully
Oh.
I rebuilt. That's another thing I started to dabble into.
Walk us through it if you can.
Okay, this particular motor is a motor I sent to Brad Hill for the Dyno Challenge. Charles had a motor in it. Barry Young and a couple other guys had motors in it. I was a little late on the entry, but I got it to him, and Charles didn't mention it when he was on the show. But this motor here was a point behind in horsepower to his motor. Okay, just to throw that out there.
Okay. What kind of horsepower numbers?
This motor made 28.8 horsepower.
Okay. Pretty stout.
Charles's motor made 28.9. Barry Young, which is the third place, made 28.7. Okay.
So you're all up there in that same category.
Same category.
Yep.
So, speaking on the motor a little bit, this one it's a small stroker. It's a stroker with a small piston, but as you can see, there's no welding on this block. There's minimal welding on the head. The displacement on this motor is smaller than both of the motors I was competing against. So we're proud of that, and I put the majority of the success with this motor into the head. We did a lot of work, a lot of R&D on this head, and it flowed well. I'm not big into boasting about my flow numbers like other people, but we believe that this combination was right with a lower flow number and the combination that's in here.
You know but on that whole flow thing, it's kind of like how you're judged, right? They measure the flow. So when people talk about the success of what they do when they're working on heads, I think that's why they point to that. You know, it's such a common phrase. Well, how'd that thing flow? Well, mine flowed 140 or 150 or whatever. So I think in the terminology, how it's evaluated, as I said earlier, everybody's in the same kind of category. You can just tell by looking at the engines and the depth of what you guys are up to. But there's always the little things. Like he talked not so much about, he has notoriety. And again, Charles had his time with us on the show last week, and I think he covered where he's coming from. This isn't really a comparative as much as everybody's got their own little deal that makes them unique.
Exactly.
And with he talked about not so much the head, if you recall, is what he thought he was accomplishing with that total gap.
His extra ring groove.
So everybody's got a little extra ring groove up their sleeve, or a little something that they do when they're staking their claim. And I'm sure you guys have your own little plan of what you like to do.
To me, it's the thinking outside of the box and trying different things. And sometimes it's not necessarily about being the pioneer of coming up with something that you say is the best. It's sometimes even looking at somebody else's idea and saying, I think this would work better. And then you try it and then say, okay, this works good for me. That's about it. So it's not necessarily the competition of saying I have the biggest number.
Sure.
It's what works for you, because it really is all about combination. I've had heads that I've done for my brother that have flowed really well, but for whatever reason, maybe the carburetor didn't flow like you wanted to.
Match, doesn't it?
It's all a match. It's all a match.
And each of the folks that have an interest with building modified engines or modified bikes, they're all doing it for different reasons. Mm-hmm. Some guys are doing it because they want to go fast. Some guys are doing it because we want to maybe sell some parts. Some people do it because they have access to, or they were born into, working in a garage.
That's what we were born into it.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, we grew up on our block, and it was race cars in our cul-de-sacs. It was flat bottom boats, pickle fork hydros, Harleys. That's how we grew up, So anything else would be boring.
So it wasn't like
my dad
you guys
was
were
a gearhead and a hot rodder. He really did his own thing, and it was way back when. The very first thing I can really truly remember of my dad doing like that, other than looking at pictures, was my dad did a real nice C10 Chevy truck, all candy orange, all
that hugger orange,
all mohair interior.
Yeah,
I mean,
you see that truck.
Spoke wheels, the whole thing, and same thing. He built shovel head Harleys. He built all these different things, and then there I was, and there was my brother in the garage in my dad's tools, and him getting upset because we didn't put them away. But we took our bikes down to bare nothing. And then figured it out and then put it back together. Now it rolls faster.
Yeah, and we'd roll till it was dark.
And Ed, we talked about that as well. You and your dad.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And so did you guys experience all the coolness that went along with the fact that your dad was building these stout vehicles? Whether it was his peers or his buddies coming over, or maybe even your peers, when they'd see the shit that your dad was up to, you kind of you rode along with that, right? It was like, yeah, man, your dad built some cool shit.
Oh, he wasn't testing it unless I was in the front seat.
Yeah, man, how cool, right?
Yeah, that's the way it was for me.
So he wasn't taking you to soccer, or baseball, or basketball. You guys were going fast when you were kids.
Yeah.
Oh, we did some martial arts, but nothing like that.
Yeah. We did our different little things. My dad wanted us to do all these different little things that we tried, and it was more about me seeing my dad working on stuff like that, and I would take my Hot Wheels apart and modify them, and I'd lower them, and I'd repaint them, and I'd, gearhead since I can remember.
Great, man. Awesome. So I like that. So I'm getting a little bit of a sense of things, and if I missed anything, when we had Charles' engine in front of us last time, many of the folks who were watching on Periscope said, hey, it would have been really cool to see that engine compared to like a stock Predator. Because we're anticipating and expecting that everybody that's listening or maybe watching later on, there's a couple ways you can access this, right? You can either view it now live, or you can listen to it on iTunes in a couple days, and then after about 5 days, we do some editing and you can watch it on YouTube.
Right.
But we collect a wide variety of folks. We've had gals on there that came to the show that barely knew how to spell minibike, and they feel like they're coming along for the ride. So there is a lot of assumptions that I made that everybody knew that this was the carburetor and this is a pipe and this is an air cleaner and this, So without getting too basic, that's why I was hopeful that you could just continue on, just walk us through the engine.
Sure.
And ultimately get to the pipes, because the pipes this is for everybody. This may not quite be as we talked about earlier. So I just love to give these guys a scope of what you're up to here. And then maybe find some time to graduate into the pipes themselves, because not only I told you I want one, I have to figure out how many of them I want, but I know that this is one of the coolest things that you could do immediately for your bike to get a good sound and get a little bit more horsepower and get a little bit of individuality on your bike. So finish up on the engine if you could. And Frank, you could join in as well too if you like.
Yeah, so, this header, this is our drag style, and I wanted to send one of these to Brad for the dyno. Okay.
Brad Hill?
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
He obviously drilled and tapped in a EGT fitting.
I was going to ask you about that.
Right. That was for the dyno tune.
Okay.
So the head itself is obviously custom. It's a one-off that we worked on together.
Okay.
We it's got titanium valves, the dual springs, roller rockers. The carburetor's an IBEA 30 millimeter. The bore and stroke is one of those things that is kind of unspoken.
Sure.
But it's a decent sized motor. It's a stroker small piston. It's a non-sleeved Predator with the ARC adjustable flywheel. Basically, the bottom end on this motor, anyone can buy offline and build themselves relatively easy. So we're happy with it. It runs on alcohol.
And it's reliable.
It's reliable. Yeah. I mean, on Brad's dyno, it got to a point where he actually texted me and asked me if I was concerned about it blowing up, because he was making pool after pool after pool on it.
It was still going?
Right.
Yeah.
And this was after we sent the carb out to Dustin. He went through the carburetor for us, and then
for the folks who may not be familiar with Dustin,
that's Dustin at Competition Carburetors.
Okay.
Yeah, he's expert with the Tillisons and whatnot.
Where is he?
Where's Dustin? Dustin's out of
West Coast or East Coast?
No, he's on the East Coast.
Yeah,
Right.
we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
A lot of folks like to know we name drop where these guys are.
Yeah.
So I try to help that out.
Right.
We'll find that out more about it. So he did a little work on the carburetor, did you say?
Yeah, he went through the carb for me. We were having issues with it leaking and whatnot, so he got that back, and then we went for it again, and that's when he says, "Okay, we're gonna go." I said, "Do it."
That kind of says a lot, Brian, because most of these engines that are submitted for competition, at least I get the sense that they're like Trailer Queen cars. Remember the Pro Street deal used to be a big thing? People
Trailer what?
Trailer Queen.
Trailer Queens.
What's that?
Cars that roll up. Cars that roll up. You know the deal. Looking like there's somebody. A lot of times these engines for competition are built for the competition. This is like just like keep this thing going.
No,
man.
we wanted to run it.
Yeah, and to me that's what I meant. That says a lot.
Right.
Unlike many of those that may have been just submitted to get through that competition, get through that test.
Yeah, we were proud. I mean, it made two back-to-back 9,600 RPM pools. Like I said, it's a non-braced, non-sleeve Predator block.
So what do we got? 28 horsepower.
Yeah, roughly 29, 28.88. So
There you go.
And we were proud of that.
Yeah, that was around. We launched a dyno at the event last year, the Joe's Minibike Reunion event, which is October 1st this year. For those of you living in a cave, we brought out a dyno, and I think that was about the highest horsepower.
27, I think.
27 change. Yeah, Joe had a Blockzilla.
made.
Yeah.
Right.
In fact, I'm still trying to get a hold of you, Joe. I've got a plaque for you with your name on it. If anybody has the opportunity to get a hold of them.
Yeah,
Look me
that's
up,
Joey.
brother.
That's Joey from Eastside Racing.
Yeah, Joey. Congrats, brother.
Yeah.
So we've got a plaque for you.
I talked to him.
Yeah, we talked
Yeah,
to all
would you
that
let him know?
yeah.
Because I really don't know him, and he probably doesn't know me. And
I'll get in touch with his son for you.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I've had it up there, and when I got that dyno there, it wasn't really to establish a competition. I just wanted it to be a treat for those folks who registered to bring their bike.
Right.
As I say that, I wanted to touch on something that it was when you and I had first had some contact.
Right.
And I think you may have even been nice enough to initiate it, although we may have indirectly swapped a couple messages on Facebook or whatever.
Right.
But you had approached me about the event, about maybe buying some space, some swap space, and I was happy to hear from you, as hopefully you got that sense. It's like, dude, I'm not interested in selling you $25 worth of grass. It's like, I want you to be a part of the event. You know, come on out and bring your stuff. And I had always given away a bike.
Right.
One year we gave away a taco kit, and maybe a time or two. I gave away a little Indian bike one year. I gave away an Isuzu kit that we built the first year. We built it on site and gave it away. I've always felt that it's almost mandatory to give away a bike
at a mini bike show,
right?
Right.
You know, because you just want to pass that torch to somebody. And it's interesting who's won them over the years as I look back. But when I saw what you guys were doing, I had no hesitation whatsoever to ask about taking anything, a roller or whatever we could get,
right?
Because I love what you're doing, and I want to help you promote these bikes, because there were very limited opportunities for folks to go out and buy a bike now. In fact, I mentioned Little Indian and Taco. I think with the exception of them and Isuzu, it's not as if you can go buy your kit a kit.
Right.
And I'm not suggesting that your bikes or what you're doing here obviously are for your sons or your daughters or yourself's first bike, but
they will be.
The fact is that that's good news, but the fact is there are folks that are really, really interested in what you're doing way beyond the pipes, and it could include them working with you to have a roller or to have a complete bike.
Right.
And let's talk a little bit about that, and then we'll also have a chance to get specific on the stage 1 through stage 3 differences on these pipes and how folks can get them. I think we even chatted about we chatted about a bunch of things earlier, but let folks know the simplest way for them to get their hands on one, right?
Right, absolutely.
So what do we offer? Someone wants to ring up FNB Racing. Obviously, you can modify an engines, and we see what you're capable of here.
There's so much more to what we offer than motor work.
Talk about that a little bit, will you, Brian?
Touching on that, the transition, we talked about that earlier, about how we transitioned into, being more, what's the word? Resourceful for the scene.
Efficient, sure.
Right?
Yep.
It started back when we started this whole gasser tournament thing with Ronald. He's a guy out of LA we put tournaments together with, and there's a few guys we helped out along the way, and we modified frames, and the very first one was my nephew Steven's bike, and the name of that bike was the Sleeper. It was a yellow bike. It was a Joe based frame, and my brother modified the shit out of it. It had a custom hub for the rear wheel assembly. We ran dual 8-inch spinner wheel setup, which was, I don't think anybody was doing the rear wheel at that time.
No.
The front wheel, yeah. Obviously,
it was a bolt-on. I had parts machined to make it work the way that I wanted it to work.
Your rear wheel assemblies are just like works of aircraft art, man.
Yeah, and it's come a long way. I mean,
yeah.
That's how it really started with that bike. And then my brother started making swing arms for guys we used to do work for, and then built a one-off. You're familiar with a guy named Goose,
right?
Okay, his bike is named XCon. It's been at every one of your shows.
Sure,
it was on the dyno last year.
Yeah.
My brother's responsible for that frame. Obviously it's his bike. We respect that.
Right.
The initial power plant in that I built for him also. That's how it really started. My brother built that XCon bike, and it just evolved from there, and it slowly started to turn into stretched bikes and drag bikes, and years passed, and it's evolved into something much greater and bigger than that now.
Well, how cool for you it's got to be, Frank, to see some of what's been lurking in that mind of yours about taking these bikes to the next level, and then
that's
it's happening.
That's where it happened. Like I was explaining to you earlier, was early on as a kid, I always dreamt up things in my head, how to modify something, how to make it work, how to do this or that, and that like my brother said, to touch on that, my son's little bike, the Sleeper, was the start, and then people wanted me to widen their bike and stretch their bike and so on. Then my brother had a Doodle Bug, which is a off-the-shelf mini bike that you could buy, and you know what, nobody at that point was out there who had stretched a Doodle Bug.
No one.
And I looked at it and I said, bro, this is just too simple not to do. I'll just do it.
Yeah.
So I just cut the bike in half one afternoon and stretched it 6 inches, and people were like,
And you look in different states now, and there's a ton of stretch doodle bugs. And I'm speaking in Detroit, North
Because
Carolina.
they were all over. They were $99.
Right.
They're almost like everybody
Very-
had to have one in their garage. At some point, you had to have it for $99.
very,
Right?
very simple stretch. And then, of course, the creativity starts going to where you want to build a different frame. And the first pro stock frame that I built was for Rick and Bert from Eastside Racing,
Yeah.
and that's been at every one of your shows
Yeah,
as well.
sure
It's
has.
the
The
root beer brown
bike.
right bike,
Really popular
and,
bike.
and that grabbed a lot of attention. And I learned a lot from that bike as I was building. I said, I'd like to change this, I'd like to change that, and then I built another bike for a customer who lives up in Canada actually, and his race team, his rider holds the world's record for the Nitro Harley drag bikes, IHRA.
You know his name?
I can't remember his name off the
Okay.
top of my head.
We'll figure it out.
But he does that. And now the owner of the bike now is going to put his son on this bike that I just made for him because he's racing junior dragsters. Well, he wanted him to have a fast bike because there you have it. They're into motorcycles. And it just continued to evolve. And now we've got several different frames that I bend up and make in-house, weld them up, and so many different options, and people ask me for it. I have lots of stuff going out to Detroit,
New York.
Yeah, New York, Canada. Eric at Studs carries a lot of my products. There's a lot of different people. There's Howard's Hardware also out there in Detroit who carries my header lines. He's bought several drag bikes from me, had them shipped there. Quite a few different people want different things. I have bikes going to Vegas and so on and so forth. I think what we're going to bring to the show for you is going to be one of our, what I call our small FNB chassis, which we brought one here with us today. So that way people can see what that bike is.
The orange bike?
Correct.
Great.
Now that one is not a off-the-shelf kind of roller, if you will. This was a custom for my brother. He wanted a lot of certain things on it, and that's what we incorporated. But for the average guy to come to the show, I'm happy to donate a bike so we can give that away so people can see it, get it out there. There are a couple guys in LA who have our style frames, our big frame, which is longer. And another customer just got another bike from me, which he's about to get delivery on that as well. He wants to have the wheelie bars chromed out and all that stuff on it. So, it keeps expanding, and now it's to the point where I'm busy enough that I'm nonstop in the garage and at the shop and whatever, building, and it's like, I'll tell my brother, hey bro, I need your help this weekend, man. And it's like even the orange bike. I said, hey bro, I built your bike, here it is. And I showed him what it was, and he goes, okay, I'm gonna show up. And we spent a day building the bike and putting it all together and so on and so forth. And
It's not easy.
It's just evolved, and there's a lot of work into building a custom bike. From the custom paint, like Evil Ed knows,
And building in general,
with
Ed
how
knows
much work
the
is
process.
involved to make something look nice, or just a raw drag bike that's all they care about is going fast down a straight line. They don't care how pretty it is.
And there's a lot of people like that.
yeah.
Well,
They'll let their frames rust.
Yeah.
As long as their motor's fast, they could give, two fucks about what it looks like.
It's the roadkill philosophy.
You
Yeah.
know?
It's like, there's shiny paint. It's almost like, what?
Well, see, and so that's what we're going to do with this bike. Not this orange bike, but one just like that as a roller to bring to the show, to show people, and to get it out there so that way you have something to give away there. And I'll give you a couple other goodies that we're going to give away out there for you because I know you like to give stuff away and, whatever, as well as I like to get the name out there because
Right.
that's what it's all about.
And to help the scene, to help it grow and to continue to move forward on something that we've started. There's a lot of guys that have started and they just sort of, not dropped off, but kind of backed off a little bit, and
Yeah, there's got to be a couple folks focused on just keeping it going. They don't have to be the ones that are responsible for everything or the best at everything. Just have these ones kind of watching the shop, so to speak, right?
Yeah, and you know what's funny about that is that people have seen different things with our products, especially being headers or the complete bikes like this. And now I've gotten more into because customers have wanted it. They want to restore the vintage mini bikes, either to custom or all original. And I mean, like you were talking earlier, down to every nut and bolt. Yep. They want it era correct. Sure. They don't want a real nice bolt on there, And some guys on the other side of that want every bolt on the thing titanium. Whatever you like, it doesn't extreme, matter.
But yeah,
well, that's the beauty of being a custom builder. Most folks, like the Mopar guys, you ever notice the Mopar guys, the Duster, Demon, Cuda guys, when they do their rebuilds, they want every nut OE.
To be correct.
Yeah, right?
They're meticulous.
Then you got, we've seen what happens with Camaros and Mustangs. It's almost like total freestyle.
Sounds good.
Yeah, use it. It's like put a Chevy motor in a Ford, no one cares. Just one of those things where just get it going. Let's talk about that bike, because that bike is really, this is what we're all hoping for, because we've gone from, as I said, having, 2 or 3 choices? Like buy a Taco or buy an Isuzu or buy a little Indian from Allied Leisure, but it's not as if, like it was before, where there's hundreds of choices.
Right.
There is no Arctic Cat, or then go buy a Bonanza, or I had an old Bozo, or Alexander Reynolds, Novas. They're just not there anymore. There's only 3 spots. So it's through efforts of what you guys are doing and folks like you are building these bikes where it's like, wow, you're starting to get a little bit back to that.
Right.
And that's why I'm so happy with what you're doing. When you decided to offer some complete bikes, what were you thinking when you tried to figure out, okay, if I'm going to sell these bikes to the masses and I want to have how did you come up with if you wanted to have 3 models or 5 models? And how did you kind of get to trying to serve the masses?
For me, the way I came up with doing that was more so around the vintage bikes, and I liked how they looked.
Got it.
And it was one of those things where I really like the Cat mini bike, the way that it looks. And people can call it a replica, they can call it a copy, they can call it whatever they like.
Okay.
But I like the design, so I went and I made that same design similar with our bikes, but I stretched them because you know what? The mini bike scene has changed a lot from, as we talked, for kids. You know what? It's not just for kids anymore. Now adults want to do it. And so I want to put them on a bigger mini bike that they could ride and it's comfortable and do that. So that's where I came up with it. I'm going to build a small bike, a medium size or a big size bike, and make it for whoever wants it and however they want it.
Yeah.
But
our FNB large chassis are perfect size for adult, really.
Yeah, it'll be very good cruiser and rider, and I can do anything from this one is what I call our traditional bar setup. It goes up and it bends out and it does all that.
I like that
Some
look.
people want a drag look, so I'll build a drag set of bars. But
like a straight bar, for example? Yeah, sure.
This bike is very comfortable. Well, you know what? I can't say that. You know why? Because after all this, with my love with all these bikes and my passion to build these things, I don't ride because I was in a bad motorcycle accident and my knee just doesn't do what it used to do.
Yeah. Okay.
So I build these things for the love of it, to see my brother ride or to see my son ride or to see them race.
Sure, I get that.
And it's exciting for me, you know?
Well, it's a work of art too.
So,
I mean, that bike particularly, perfect size, perfect look. It's I've always wondered about rigid frame or suspension. I was visiting the folks down at Alden Manufacturing. They're a long-standing shock company.
Mm-hmm. I know. I'm familiar with Alden.
So a buddy of mine just purchased them about 2 years ago, and he's doing really well. Garrett, continued success down there, and he has been a friend of mine. And if you're a friend of mine, you're forced to hear about all this mini bike bullshit because that's all I talk about. So he had talked about him and I were having a conversation about mini bikes and the fact that none of them are available and they're all rigid frame, and how cool it would be to have a full-size mini bike with suspension. And you immediately start thinking about like that rear shock Bonanza right behind you, Ed. And it's like, you know what? That really is more to looks than purpose. And they talked about a single shock, like a dirt bike.
Swing arm.
A single shock in the front.
Okay.
So and you start, and just as I was having those conversations, like nowadays with the mindset and the technology, the guys that made the first stage 1 pipe versus what they do now, and obviously you're doing it, it's come a long way. Same thing with the bikes. So now we could really rebuild these cool mini bikes in a much safer, better way. The frames could be bigger to suit us because we're adults. We're not little kids anymore.
And stronger.
The engines, yeah.
More well engineered.
So talk a little bit about when you were designing that bike with that in mind, because it looks to me like you've created what I just described, man. That thing looks perfect.
Well, like I said, that bike goes back to my inspiration on that bike was the design of a cat mini bike because I liked it, and we wanted it to be short and still long and fit our needs for what my brother calls a quote-unquote cruiser.
Yeah,
and
that's kind of a longer frame to those of us, just expression, right?
Right.
But yours is also not only longer, but lower, too.
Right.
What are the dimensions on that? You know, kind of offhand?
The overall dimensions on the bike, I believe that bike is...
As it sits there on tires.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at what I drew up there, but I believe that the wheelbase measurement on that bike is about 42 inches or so.
Okay.
It's not very long, but it's long enough to do, be comfortable and ride. For
the power that's in the bike, the chassis set up perfect.
Okay.
And I've ridden this long distances already with that motor that's in it.
So you're not vibrating your arms off?
This
or
bike is probably one of the most comfortable bikes I've ridden.
Really?
The brake system's dead on. The power plant I made up for it is perfect.
Yeah. See, it's got that signature rear end assembly there.
The live axle is a plus. The jack shaft setup is what I wanted. Not to mention the exhaust system. My brother made up on that. We decided to go with the muffler versus our open header systems because, like my brother said earlier, this was going to be a cruiser. So I got a muffler system off of I want to say an SSR pit bike.
Oh yeah, the popular. Those things are all over the place. Sure.
So we rigged up a single stage and we put it on there, and the sound's really unique, and it creates a really nice sound, and the mid range really improved over our open header setup.
Yeah,
so
maybe we can fire that baby up.
If I was gonna bring my electric starter, but I didn't.
Oh, well, we'll have something to do next time. We'll do it at the show.
Sure.
Guys can come and check it out at
I
the
want to
show.
put it on the dyno at the show.
You kidding me? I want you to bring a million bikes to go on the dyno.
We're planning on bringing a few of the bikes that I've actually restored. Some of them obviously have already posted some pictures up on Facebook, so people could kind of see them. But to see the bikes in person compared to seeing them on a picture is a completely another story. And as my brother was telling me earlier, he says at the show it was funny because it was overcast. He put the bike up, set it up on a motorcycle stand, and everybody's looking at it. Oh, wow, that's really nice. And then when the sun came out, it's like, wow, look at that color. It just pops.
Right. My brother's referring to the GT Minibike show.
Oh, yeah, the recent one.
Out in Southgate.
Yeah.
A couple weeks back.
Congrats to those guys. In fact, that bike was one of the marquee bikes in the photo that I saw, if I recall.
Yeah, Rafa put on a real good show.
Yeah, good.
It was nice, and
I would love to get involved with that. I don't know that I am clearly viewed by many of the guys that are in that scene. I just haven't quite been able to be figured out yet by those guys. I don't know if they think that I've got some master plan, but I embrace all of them. I love for all those guys. You mentioned Joes and GTs, and we talked about some of these other guys. I'd love them all to come out to that event. Yeah. It's all but free to come out, and I do it for the same reasons you talked about, kind of keep this thing going, and watch those guys marvel at what you're doing. The fact that you guys would come on to attend that show, to not only support it by giving away some items, which you mentioned we all like to give some stuff away, but to bring out those bikes is really cool. And I thank you for that, because that's what I tell these people. Say, come on out, and you get a chance to see some old Nova from the 60s, right? Mm-hmm. All rotted out with maybe a new Tecumseh, or you can see like the modern, now built for now mini bikes. Those Groms that we talked about. In fact, Emmanuel had asked me, one of the comments we got is if in fact those were really mini bikes. And I kind of said, well, yeah, in my view, they're like modern day mini bikes. But now that I look at that, and then I look at that old Nova, and then I look at that Grom, this to me is more of a modern day mini bike than to it literally than that, as I reference that. That's almost beyond in so many ways. That's more mini motorcycle.
Right.
That's true. That is a modern day mini bike there. Just in my humble opinion. So those guys who are a part of that scene, who had a chance to check that bike out at that show, hopefully they'll have a chance to come and check it out at our show as well. So what other bikes will you be bringing out, Frank?
There's actually 2 other bikes in particular that I'm working on now. One is, I believe it's a 1968 Stellar.
Wow.
And it's all candy red. It's a really nice bike. Has a 2-stroke engine in it, and it's really well detailed. He didn't want to go stock on it. He wanted it to look modern, updated, but keeping the vintage look. So he didn't want to change too much. A 100% original Little Indian, everything on it will all go back on. I mean, down to he had custom stickers replicated to be exactly like the original ones were.
Did he have one as a kid? Was that what he was going for?
He's got a huge collection, this guy.
You might know him,
that
man.
doing these bikes for. And he's the one I told you who has he just obtained a Bug mini bike.
Yeah.
And an NOS Bug motor.
Wow.
Never been run, never had oil in it, nothing. All the NOS wheels, and he's gonna have me go through that bike and restore it 100% to original, because he doesn't want it to be modified. And we'll be bringing a few bikes out there and putting a nice little display up for people to be able to look at the vintage bikes. I mean, I remember honestly, the reason why I bought the Bonanza that I bought from the kid that I bought it from, because he modified it and made it get jacked up and then couldn't afford to fix it. I bought it from him and gave him another mini bike that he wasn't going to destroy a Bonanza, was because of Ed.
That's right. And we got a gas tank for that Bonanza from
you.
Ed.
Tell us a little bit more. Share a little bit more about that.
Well, go ahead, Ed. You make the gas tanks.
Yeah,
It was
I
a
make
long
the
time
gas
ago.
tanks for the MX and BC Bonanzas. And I make the MX fenders, and I make an MX seat pan with fiberglass reproductions.
Didn't we get a set of kidney beans from you too? Didn't we get wheels from him?
I don't recall who I got the wheels from, but yes, I have a set of kidney beans. And that was because you had informed me that they come with the power wheel and they come with the kidney beans.
Right.
And I was able to find the kidney beans first. And I don't remember if I bought them from you or not, but
I don't remember.
maybe it was from Guardrail Dave. I don't remember.
Fiberglass.
You mentioned Guardrail Dave a couple of times. I'm hoping to get Guardrail Dave on one of the next podcasts. He's not too far from here. He's like a stone's throw away.
No, right.
Right.
Yeah, like in Sunland. And he not only do I love his voice. Where's he from? Wisconsin? He's got one of those He's got a really unique
Little accent,
Oh,
too.
I love it, but I haven't seen him around lately. You know, I know he bought a Jeep. I remember he got a new Jeep. I hadn't seen him since.
He bought a motorhome too.
Did he? No shit.
That's why you haven't seen him.
Yeah. Well, good for him. But Guardrail Dave, you know, his
He's a
name
good
pops
guy.
up frequently, but not as often as Ed's, huh?
No.
And you guys, you know, you have to sense it just like I do. And Ed plays it off. He's so modest, but I think that a custom Evil Ed line of exhaust or even wheels or seats, I don't think there's any replacement part on a mini bike.
I just make the Bonanza stuff. That's it.
Well, you specialize in that,
Yeah.
but it's not as
That's
if Ed.
enough for me.
Yeah,
Well, you're you know, when I see a Bonanza, I think about you, Ed,
Oh yeah.
not your beard.
Well, you don't have a choice on that one, but you know, Ed, you have that, like it or not, you have that. Where and what that really means is that somewhere along the line of having fun and showing up racing and doing the deal after all these years, you've established yourself, man. And you know, people really parlay that in different ways. You see guys that have endorsed. What was that? Brian Deegan, right? He endorsed like everything now, wheels and Gibson exhaust, right? And exhaust, the Brian Deegan exhaust, and Mickey Thompson has the Brian Deegan wheel. I've always told Ed that whenever he wants to turn on that instant revenue switch, I really think he's got enough credibility out there. And you guys are been around long enough where he's one of the few guys. And you know, you guys are doing that now too. I mean, you're providing these products from the bolt-on exhaust to the complete bikes. Are you guys prepared for this shit when it really starts to get going? I mean,
We talk about that. We like I said earlier, how it transitioned for us. It just happened, and I think that's the mindset. Just
let it happen then.
yeah, you know,
If it blows up, you're gonna blow
try
up.
not to overthink it.
Yeah.
Try to keep it simple, and you know, obviously there's other factors, but
Sure.
you know.
and we're not really trying to dig into that as much as I'm just getting the sense. And I had mentioned to Emmanuel that I really hadn't had a chance to establish a rapport with you guys, not as if we go back a long way, but just a short period of time in text, I got like a good feel about you guys, and I could sense it between yourselves that you guys have a really unique little thing going on here. Most brothers like visiting on Saturdays.
Most brothers hate each other.
Well, I hate to say it, but it does kind of, it happens more often that way than it.
I like it when two brothers get along.
I think
Me and my
everybody
brother
does,
don't
Ed.
get along.
Yeah. Well, I can go on about mine, and he could probably do the same. It's like
Yeah.
that's how it goes, right? So because everybody has had a brother or a brother's story, to see you guys kind of doing this, and because it's almost like you haven't given away the childhood either. It's like you're still doing things that you were doing back when you were young, and now it's just evolving into a biz. Now, is this the majority of everything else you do, or is this a part of something else that you do? How much of the F&B 9 to 5 gig is all about mini bikes? Are you guys doing other things? Are you doing cars? Are you doing...
I do restoration of cars, frame off restorations as my 9 to 5, if you will. And I do this after hours a couple days a week, and then I try and dedicate Saturdays to it and still be able to give my family some time too. But
sounds like it's getting tougher to do this.
It is tougher, and I've got to weigh things out there, and I'm trying to do my best with that. But with that being said, if things take off like my brother and I have talked about, to the point where it can take over and effectively make
generate
enough money
the income
to,
that we need
to do it, then it can become full time, absolutely. But right now, I have one of my buddies, Joe, come in, and he comes in every Saturday religiously, and he helps me
your
do
guy?
anything I need to do. Now, he's not a welder, he's not a fabricator, he's not a, what he can do for me is come in, he can cut my parts, he can deburr my parts, he can clean them so I can weld them, and so on.
Keeps the machine going?
Right, and my brother can come in on days that he has available, and he knows how to assemble them. I don't have to watch him. I just say, here's all the stuff. Whatever you need, let me know, and he can do it. No problem.
Yeah.
Same as with the engines. You know what? I can do it. I don't have time for it. I say, bro, you love to do it? Have at it. And he goes, and this is him. All the motor stuff is my brother.
Great. So that's the compliment. Brian, did you find yourself kind of driving the power plants and the engine design and work, and you're bending the tubes and doing the suspension creation and kind of like the...
I believe
Absolutely.
that's what makes it special.
Got it.
You know, is being able to understand each other without even speaking.
Yeah.
You know, I tell them what I'm going to do with the motor and build something for it. And this was money. We didn't really speak about what to do. I wanted the jack shaft, that was it. And I wanted a cruiser. And it just came together on its own.
All of a sudden, one day, I have it all bent up. It's sitting at the shop, and I'll bend up 6 or 10 of these bikes at a time. I don't like to bend one because it takes too much of my time to do that. I'll bend them up, and he comes into the shop, and they're all lined up. All these frames are lined up, ready to get welded up. And then I call him. I say, "Hey, bro, I got your bike." Then he goes, "What?" And he'll come down to the shop and look. Wow.
Or he'll pop up at my work. Because I work a swing, and he'll swing by. And he did one day after we got this powder coated. We went through the process and picked a color. We're debating on this color.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, it's a candy orange. And we named the bike, too. The bike's a clockwork orange, we call it.
Oh, I love it. Yeah,
familiar with that movie, but...
You know, you can get too bright on orange. This has got like that... it's not quite matte, but it's got like... It's a little bit... And then, like, I'm sure that thing's going to pop.
In the sun, it turns into a whole nother bike.
Yeah.
So what happened at the... Yeah, it's got a real nice base. And once the sun hits it, it's nice. But
well, a lot of my customers have done that, and being that it is candy orange, I've had my customers say, "Hey, I want it exactly like your blue bike." That's all I kept hearing over and over. And I bought that bike originally from Guardrail Dave, because he bought it from JD, and then I bought it, and we were going to keep it a secret and get everything put together and have the whole bike done and pop out with it. Well, it didn't work that way because people find out all the time. They find out. Nonetheless, I powder coated it blue, made my changes to the chassis, whatever. And then a guy says, "Okay, well, now I want my bike called Racing Raspberry." So I just built this other bike for a customer in LA, and it really is a pretty color, Racing Raspberry. Everybody says, "Oh, no, it's a pink bike, and it's a pink bike, and who wants a pink bike?" But when you see this bike in real, it's like, okay, it looks good.
The internet pictures do no justice.
Yeah.
When this guy sees his bike, and you know who you are,
Yeah.
it's gonna knock the socks off of him.
Plus, let's face it, when the bike's badass, that thing could be pink. It'll still be strong, right?
And I know it's gonna be fast.
Yeah.
I mean, this particular group, they have the fastest stock bore motor out in the LA scene right now. So it's I think it's going to accent their
Great
mindset of going fast and looking sharp and everything. It's going to come together nice.
And that goes right back to what we're saying, keeping the mini bike scene alive, having people come out, do what they do. I'm trying to put frames out there that people can ride. There are obviously other people out there doing it as well, and that's great. More power to anybody who can do it.
And complete one.
Yeah, and complete one, definitely. I mean, I have done, like you said, custom bikes for people or back tail sections or whatever. I have built custom one-off rear tail sections on a bike that has suspension. The very first one that I did for Goose's brother.
Yeah.
And I built the swing arm with a monoshock from a bicycle on there. And I don't know, he just lost the passion for it and just decided never to finish the bike. I don't know where it's at today, but he didn't do it. Then I did another one for another guy, and I've seen pictures of it that he's using that swing arm on something else. And it's really neat to see the thing evolving, to see what people are doing with it. And you have the guys doing the trikes. I'll be honest with you, I thought about doing a trike that way a long time ago, just putting the wheels on, putting a long axle on there, putting wheels on both outsides, and
real basic,
and doing like a bike like that. But then I'm like, wait, it's gonna turn like an ATC. It's not gonna turn like a motorcycle. So I just see people getting hurt, and I'm thinking to myself in my mind, how am I gonna make that articulate so it can be cool, but
and functional?
I just
then you start building a quad, because you wouldn't probably be doing it with 3 wheels.
Yeah,
I think those bikes are definitely getting attention, right? So if I wanted to do like a promotional bike, like I'd maybe have one in the stable, a 3-wheeler, but in terms of like building one like you are that could appeal to masses,
right?
That probably doesn't have as much appeal. But who knows the way the trends are. That bike, that orange bike, when folks have the option to purchase that bike, can they purchase it in as basic as a 2-piece frame? Can they purchase it in a roller? Can you give it a little bit of an idea of what the basic options are, and then maybe the cost of admission, so to speak? Talk a little bit about that, Frank, maybe?
Absolutely. We could sell... I typically like to sell my frame and forks as a package, only because I typically set up the ride height in the bike, so when they put their wheels and tires on, they don't have oddball wheels and tires, right? Yeah. Everything is going to be pretty straightforward on it. Typical entry-level frame and forks, about $250. And then you can go up from there with everything. I mean, this bike, my brother wanted many options on. You've got your jack shaft, you've got your live axle, you've got your disc brakes, you've got 8-inch spinner front rim, you've got
tack mount.
All the different things, and it can get into a real long conversation that way. So when it comes to building a bike with the options, I just prefer that people call me and tell me what they want, so I can give them a realistic price range. Not say, okay, well, your bike's going to cost you $1,500, and then they just walk away because they don't know what they're getting for $1,500.
Well, they're expecting a $250 price tag to be that.
Yeah, I've noticed that as much as I really love what we do here with this industry, that there's a lot of something in the friggin' water. I don't know. I don't want to identify us as a bunch of cheap bastards, but I must admit that you even see it when Max sets up his deal. It's like everything. You try to buy anything. Like they're just saying these little screw-off mufflers. Ed, what are those? $25 now?
Yeah, I've seen them for 30.
All right, so we're at a place now where everything. This engine, I got a good deal on it, but I saw a guy trying to sell a 3.5 horsepower used Clinton engine for $400.
Are they getting it?
They're asking for it. You see that fucking thing on eBay every week.
That's why.
And that's what you hear a lot about too. Well, they're going for $500 on eBay. It's like, no, they're being listed on there, and you can go there anytime.
I see that on eBay all the time with Bonanza stuff.
But I do think that as I was doing the math, because there was a time, to be honest with you, where I really wanted to establish a brand to the point where maybe I could offer a frame, and I just don't think my mind's into it. You have to have your arms around that.
Yeah.
In addition to having the technical prowess and skill, I'm not there. I'm more of a marketing guy than I am like wanting to operate a manufacturing company. Like, but I know guys who manufacture and bend tubes, and I have those relationships where I can do it. But I very quickly realized that I was going to get to a point where I was going to be building these bikes for me, and I would spend a little bit more. But most of the guys that I would have to sell to, they're not like me. They want everything for $200 or $300.
Yeah.
You know, we want that, and we realize by the time we're done wanting that $300 kit, my bike's going to be $1,800 or
Easy.
$2,000 or $3,000, and
Easy.
by the time I'm done with that engine, I'm probably up to what it would be to buy that new Grom, and then by the time I'm doing the shit I want to do, I could almost buy 2 of those Groms. Now I got $4 or $5 grand into a mini bike. Then it takes on a whole different world, right? So, curious where your middle is going to be. Do you see when the guys ring you up? Let's first of all hope that they're smart enough and qualified enough to realize that they're not buying a $99 doodle bug, right?
Right.
And even these $299, because Joe from Taco will $299 Taco mini bike frame. Well, you know that by the time you add the wheels and this and that, it's $1,500. You got to buy an engine. It's $2-3 grand, even for a small Taco, right?
Yeah.
Well,
That's the part that people don't understand. It's the add-ons. Everything 100, 200, 300, 1,500 because they want to go fast on the motor, and then they want a different clutch, and they want this and they want that. That's where it gets really sticky because it's almost to the point where with some of the people they say, "Hey, I'm on your website. I see your frame. What do you get for $250? What do you get for $350? Whatever it is."
So you know right there though,
right? And a lot of the times, and I've heard my brother do this to customers. He says to them, "What is your budget? What do you plan on spending?"
That's what I have to start.
And it's genuinely as open of a question that is, doesn't I don't know how you feel about this, Brian, but it turns most people off.
I've gotten into arguments where people have
My
thought
budget, it's none of your fucking business. You know, it's like, how much is the bike? You know, it's like you're selling a $300 kit. Doesn't it come with everything? It's like, no, it doesn't come with everything.
Right.
It comes with the neck, like we said, and the frame.
Yeah, no, it's true. I've had people react in a you've insulted me type of reaction, and it's not that at all. It's I don't
want to insult you afterwards.
That's right.
Yeah.
I want to know where we're at and have a good rapport up front.
Yeah.
Not have you expect more than what you get.
And it's not being rude.
Sure.
You know, it's just having dealt with handful of people and explained yourself so many times. Now you've tried to kind of figure it out. You know, this is how it needs to start so that we could get the ball rolling.
Yeah, you have to be in control of that call. You start. You know,
I mean, even with that being said, there's a perfect scenario that I just said something with Ed about earlier outside. I can go down and get a mini bike and frame powder coated for $150, and then that same guy wants a custom candy color paint job put on that mini bike, and he wants to know why Ed right here won't paint it for $150.
Yeah.
You know why?
Store and buy the paint.
Yeah, exactly.
Tester cans. Go buy
Buy
some
all the
model
paint.
paint.
You do all the prep. I'll shoot it for $150.
Despite the fact that these humble, basic, and it started early with us with those stupid ads where you could buy the whole mini bike for $19.95 or whatever it turned out.
Yeah.
We were started originally with this low cost of entry sport that is just it's matured like every other thing in this world, where those days are really over.
Right.
I want to take a walk through the product line as we keep getting to. Usually around this time of the show, we take a little bit of a pause. We'll let everybody catch up, maybe grab a drink or stretch your legs a little bit.
You know,
we're here with the guys from FNB Racing, Brian and Frank, and Evil Ed's been sitting in. Those of you who have been watching us on Periscope, thanks for that.
Cutting Brian off, checking on my dog.
Yeah, Ed so far saved his dog
No
twice. We're going to take a short little time out and check out the score here between Golden State and Cleveland, and we'll catch up with you guys in a little bit. For those of you on Periscope, stick around. If you have any questions, like I said, bring them on. We've got some prizes to give away and a lot more at Joe's Minibike Reunion podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to Joe's Minibike Reunion podcast number 5. Who the hell would have thought we'd make it through 5? This just in, Golden State Warriors beat the Cleveland Cavs in the first game of the NBA Finals. It's going to be a good one, maybe not. We'll have to check it out. But enough about NBA basketball. It's mini bikes, and it's more about F&B Racing on today's podcast, or tonight's podcast here in the garage. Before I want to get into this awesome big block engine that we're rotating engines. It's got the stage 3 pipe. Before I get into talking a little bit more specifically about the cool F&B Racing parts with you guys and talking about the exhaust, I know that you guys come across a lot of folks, whether they're customers or maybe they're, you mentioned that one guy who's your guy who comes in the shop and helps you with everything. What was his name?
Joe.
Okay. You got a Joe. We all got a Joe, right? Hey, yeah. We all have an Ed.
I don't have a Joe.
You don't have a Joe?
Ed, I'm your Joe, Ed.
Yeah.
Who are some of the guys that make F&B Racing tick a little bit smoother on a day-in, day-out basis that you'd like to maybe take a second and mention? We talked a little bit about your dad, and I think I'd almost want to start there with him. I know he inspired
Correct.
you a lot.
Well, one of the pictures that I was talking to you about was the picture that you just recently put up of my brother and myself standing next to a modified Joe's chassis. That bike was a tribute bike built in remembrance of my dad, because he started that bike before he passed of cancer. And so my brother and I talked about it. We said, we really need to build something and get something completed for him that he wanted to do. And so
cool.
we did the bike, and my brother rode it, and we did a lot with that bike, and we still have it, in fact, and we kick it around. Well, are we going to sell that, or it can just be a monument? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's a keeper. And you know what? If there's room in the truck, and it sounds like it may be a packed house, but maybe that'd be a nice bike for you to bring out, I'd like to touch on it. As you know, we recognized Gerald's a good friend of ours, and he's been struggling with cancer. Seems like everybody, unfortunately, either has somebody that's involved with that nasty disease, and we put Gerald's initials on the back of the hat, because in the midst of having all the fun, we know that there's a cruel reality out there. Sometimes it takes away our loved ones, right?
Absolutely.
So if you had that bike out there, maybe we could just recognize not only your dad, but Gerald. So if you bring that bike out, I'm sure, and I would have mentioned that if I knew about it. Charles had shared that photo with us that we put up there as I was promoting the fact that you guys were coming on.
Right.
Yeah, well, fortunately you had that dad that inspired you guys to do such cool things like you're doing now. Who else is part of the family, so to speak, that helps you guys out that you like to recognize?
Couple different people. I'd like to first of all recognize my distributors, Tim Iskey at Small Engine Cams.
His name popped.
Yeah,
I got to have him on this show, Ed.
Right.
And we can't get him to answer the phone, Frank. He's so
a
busy.
good guy. He is very busy.
Would you hook us up? Or could you tell him maybe?
Absolutely. I'll let him know.
In fact, maybe he can join us when you guys come back in and sit
We'd
down.
love that.
Yeah,
At
absolutely.
the reunion.
Yeah, he came to the reunion. I was stroked. I know his dad really well.
Yeah, Ed.
Man, that guy's still ticking. It's amazing.
I'm privileged enough to host. I'm the MC of the SEMA Hall of Fame, and every year we induct people into the Hall of Fame. This year, Chip Foose is inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Chip's mini bike was at the show, but Ed is one of our. We just lost Louis Center, who's another iconic hot rodder.
Right.
And Iskey's just an icon. He comes into that SEMA show. That SEMA show, there's 100,000 people there.
Right.
Iskey shows up.
With
People,
a
it's like
cigar?
he's like fucking Mick Jagger, man.
Yep,
People are like,
he is.
it's Iskey. There used to be a guy, Jim Deast from Deast Safety. He always had that
Yeah.
cigar, and we lost Jim not too long ago. His family lives up here in La Crescenta, and there's certain guys, but we got to get Tim on there because he's so much of a part. So Tim's a guy that
It's funny you talk about Ed, because I remember Ed from being a little boy, and my dad walking into Iskandarian Racing Cams and talking to Ed about cams that he was putting in his cars and all that. Anyway, the next time I saw Ed since I've been a young child was going in to visit Tim Iskey, and his dad pulled in his Cadillac, and he had every newspaper for the last 20 years in that car
Yeah.
stacked to the roof. Yeah. And Tim tells me, he goes, that's how my dad rolls. He says, and when he can't fit any more in the car, he'll go buy a new Cadillac.
Yeah.
And that's what he does.
Yeah. And he feeds his cats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has a tribe of cats out in the front of his business that he takes care of.
certain things don't change.
No,
no matter what.
That's a good heart.
And when and many of those guys, he's part of a dying breed, and I mean that figuratively, not literally. That is never going to change. He's never going to change. There's a couple guys out there now, like David Freiberger from Roadkill. Mm-hmm. He's starting to get a lot of popularity now, but David's the same guy now that he was 15 years ago.
I think that's important.
Yeah, it sure is. Ed is the same way.
Yeah.
Ed is not some...
Yeah.
Ed didn't change. Like, he didn't get the iPhone yet.
He's well grounded.
He ain't getting the fucking
What's an
iPhone.
iPhone?
He's not getting a Tesla, right? Well, shout outs.
I know what a Tesla is.
Right.
Yeah, we were talking about somebody today that can't pay their light bill, but they got $1,000 a
I
month
almost
Tesla.
got hit by
bill.
one the other day. I couldn't hear it.
You wouldn't know. Yeah.
Yeah,
you
they're
wouldn't
quiet.
Walking by. And
That's why I changed the pipe
Oh.
on that Grom. You know, we parked. That's the first thing I did. It was so quiet. It's like I gotta get a pipe on this thing.
Yeah,
it's
there
not
you go.
fast enough to get out of people's way. Who else can we give a little shout out to?
Eric at Studs Hardware.
Yeah.
Oh,
He's another one. He's out in Michigan, and he carries my full line of product as far as all my headers, supplying to all the guys out there anything that people need. And another one is Howard's Hardware, Aaron out there. He's bought quite a few pipes from me as well as a few complete drag mini bikes.
How about you, Brian? I'm sure you're dealing with the same group, but I'm sure there's probably a few folks, considering you're more focused on the engine and performance parts. Maybe you're
Definitely.
dealing with a few folks.
Well, to start off, it would be Tim also.
Yeah.
You know, Tim's a busy guy, and I can't tell you how many times I've texted him personally on his personal number, and he's gotten back to me, and I've gotten my parts in 2 days.
How cool.
You know, I don't.
You're on that bat phone line. You have that
Yeah.
direct. Yeah, good for you.
I would like to think that. I think we have a real good relationship with him, especially here.
Great.
You know, representing the West Coast.
Yeah, man.
I mean, that's just what it is. I mean, there's a few other guys. I mean, you know, the motor stuff I've been doing for a while, and JD's big with the valves. He supplies
JD Ayers?
Right. He supplies a lot of people.
That's
Yes,
my
I
man.
know.
Yeah.
Right, and JD helps me out. I mean, we've had our little bantering or little disagreements or whatever over the years.
Seems like a common denominator with all our
You know what
guests.
though? At the end of the day, you know, dislikes of people or whatever, we always find our way back.
B, if you're not pissing off a few people, you ain't working hard
That's
enough.
right. That's right. I want to thank him personally.
Well, there you go.
You know, that's JD for one. You know, I haven't worked with Brad Hill as much, but him too. I mean, he helped me out a lot. He did some work to that motor, my Dyno Challenge motor. You know, and typically that's not what people do when you send them a motor to dyno. They're not going to mess with it. And I want to thank him for that.
That little extra effort.
Sure. I
Yeah.
mean, Barry Young from Young Engines, we've talked a lot, you know, through Messenger, and he's opened up, and it's kind of rare to get people who have speed secrets to open up like that.
Yeah. You know, I'm hoping that through this podcast, we can help resonate some of the work that some of these guys have done, because through the podcast, despite the fact that it's only the four of us probably watching the friggin' thing, there's going to be an opportunity for us to give a voice to appropriate folks that are in this inner circle.
Sure.
And I also think that those guys that you mentioned are great potential guests. The problem we have is that's a West Coast show, so it's tough for the guys over there on the
Right.
East Coast to roll over. And maybe as we get advanced, there's even guys locally with, like in Temecula, I want to have Temecula Bob or Taco Bill on the show.
Sure.
But these poor guys are like, they have the same task as a poor bastard. Got to take a 2-hour flight to come here. They got a 2-hour drive to get here.
Right.
So it's tough to get a lot of those guys in the show. So by recognizing them as you are, it helps me give a little bit of a spotlight to them when I may not quite be able to get them on the podcast.
Sure,
But,
and then there's more.
Yeah.
There's more, Joe. You know, Lonnie over at Copper Gasket Unlimited.
I
you
see
know,
some of those over here. Pretty
we've-
nice job on these. Is this some of his work?
That is his work. Yes.
That's our new exhaust flange gasket that we're offering.
Could have used a few of these in the day,
He
huh?
cut those out for us. We'll be selling those along with our header setups if people want them. It's a no-brainer, you know. Why buy a new gasket every time when you can reuse the
that's
copper gasket?
without a doubt. That, in fact, anybody that would buy one of these without that, you should just make it a part of it.
Right.
Almost like force them to do the right thing.
Well, I think that's going to become part of it, because
Yes.
you said that, and when I sell the pipes to my distributors per se, it will come along with the gaskets at the same time.
And it's also an incentive because this has a value. Whether it's
course.
$18 or $8 or $9. I say we make it a part of the kit. We kick it off that way, that it comes with this now. Hey, eventually, you may need another one.
Oh, we're thinking alike, Joe.
Eventually, this may not always come as a part of this special deal, but at some point making it available, because you want the masses of those that are going to be sold right out of the box to be installed properly with the right advantage.
Gaskets,
This could be
right.
the deal.
It would be cool in 50 years, let's say, if somebody were to open up a box with our header and that gasket in
man.
it, the same way you showed us that Tecumseh
That
header.
is going to happen. Brian, that is going to happen. As you and I sit here and talk, That's another one of Ed's.
Yeah, he's a popular guy.
He's got the TV show. Now now the Gas Monkey guys want. I got competition. I'm gonna have to start fucking paying him to come over now. I'm creating a monster, I swear. But it's all good.
I don't know if we're on shout out mode right now, but I have a couple of people.
You blast them.
You know, another guy that I started messing with, towards the beginning of me goofing off with these mini bikes is a guy out in Moreno Valley. His name's Minibike Mo.
Okay.
Okay.
I haven't heard of Minibike.
Shout out. I don't know if he's watching the show or not, but Mo, me and you had some battles too, and Nitro Drew. Nitro Drew's
That's a great name,
guy.
huh? Nitro Drew.
And he got his name for a reason, and that's another guy that sort of, he started his family, he drifted off, and that's cool.
Can't leave out Dale.
Charles mentioned some guys that had slipped away, Ed, just like in life.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Come and go.
Yeah. All the guys that you probably have run into, that it's like, where are they now? It's like, shit.
Like Dave, Guardrail Dave.
Yeah.
Be heavy in it. Now he's off camping and four-wheeling and...
Life goes on, right?
He put the hobby on pause, that's all.
And that's... I really... Because we got about 10 minutes to go on this thing here. I actually got 5, right? The thing is, guys, is that it can just... As quickly as it starts, life goes on. You got shit that happens. And sometimes dicking around with mini bikes...
I don't think that table's going to hold up for 5 more minutes.
Well,
that's the big block.
Well, look, give me a couple minutes on the big block, and then let's give it a quick little highlight on this big block.
Highlight on this motor is, I built this for my buddy out in Hawthorne. It's a 406cc GX390. It's got a 4-disc, 1-inch bully turbo clutch, ARC flywheel. It's got a Parsons pop-up piston, ARC rod. The motor's fully balanced. Obviously, it's got our FNB 3-stage on it. Parsons valve cover, roller rockers, tie valves, courtesy of JD. It's got a... what the hell did we do to the head?
What'd you do with the carb?
This carburetor is a 34mm Clements carb.
Oh, Clements, okay.
Yeah, real nice. We didn't want to go too big on it. It's an alcohol motor, so... it's a nice build. You guys are going to see it. Any of the local guys in Cali is going to see this motor running.
And with our Alky motor, we're talking catch cans, right?
Absolutely. That's going to be
a nice piece here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, the breather is kind of like what I'd find on my little small block Chevy.
That's exactly what that is from. Yeah. I did that because a lot of people would go with the traditional K&N type air filter, and it would get saturated and soak up and start dripping and leaking. Well, there's also a baffle designed inside of there to keep the oil from splashing and coming up and going to that oil filter or the air filter, and as well as the multiple ports out there, so if your motor has to have extra breathing, it can have that as well.
And
so when you're
any auto parts,
that's right.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Important.
And on these motors running alcohol, you don't have an option really. You've got to go with a catch can.
You've got to vent all of these motors because a single cylinder
blowback
creates a lot of internal pressure, and I'll be honest with you, the internal pressure is a big part of why you see some of these high performance engines blow the heads off of them.
Or blow crankcase seals, side cover seals, side cover gaskets. A lot of guys,
2 minutes.
They're not venting properly, and to feed this motor, our gas tanks, these are going to be these are what we're selling now. These are all one-off. They're all one-off tanks.
Yeah, and they're long enough to actually have enough fuel in there to actually
to do a little bit of something
especially
right.
with those engines that are gobbling up the gas.
Sure.
Right.
I wanted to, because we're wrapping up kind of quickly here. We've got the pipes.
Yeah, our pipes go in different stages. Single stage pipe here, which starts out for the basic build, nothing extra special. Then you go to your racing 3-stage center exit pipe for the mini bikes that the mini bikes need to come out there.
Got it.
You've obviously got, this one here is the big block pipe, which is on this motor here.
Wow, you can feel the difference too.
Right. Yeah. This is our drag pipe, which is the same pipe that was put on the dyno motor that made, all the passes. Then you've got the little bit of bling out there, which is the same pipes but with the chrome on them.
That's triple dip show chrome.
Yeah.
Right.
What a nice job on the chrome work on this as well. And we talked a little bit about the gasket.
Yeah, and then the copper gasket, we're going to start including those with them so people can get these things sealed up properly.
Yeah. The pipes, folks, this is not like just a fucking home shopping club.
Yeah.
The reality of it is that on the pipes, what's retail on pipes? I want a pipe tomorrow. I'm going to call you. I'm going to call one of the distributors. I want a stage 1 pipe. How much does it cost?
A stage 1 pipe is $50. And a stage 3 pipe is $65. Unless it's a big block pipe, and that's $75. It's a little bit bigger tubing. Very reasonably priced for a good quality piece. They're all TIG welded.
That's right.
And that's it. It's a quality piece.
Well, Frank, Brian, Ed, thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
It's been a blast, and you can tell the time goes by pretty quick.
Absolutely.
Hopefully you guys will show up again another time and step in the garage. We can catch
Definitely.
up on some things. Thank you for your support of the show. For those of you who are watching the podcast, check us out. On October the 1st, you can see these guys live in person, as well as see some of their products. I'd like to give a shout out to Muhammad Ali. He's struggling in hospital in Arizona now with some respiration issues, and the champ's my man. So those of you who are out there and champs of Muhammad Ali, the greatest, thanks for listening in. Thanks for watching. A couple parting shots, Brian.
Shout out to West Coast Minibikes. Shout out to GT Hobbies. Shout out to all the racing crews in SoCal. West Coast is putting it on the map, and that's all there is to it.
And we got some more of these butts from Ed, $500 a pop, a limited edition. Hey, next podcast, it's going to be a couple weeks. I've got to go out to a wedding. In fact, congratulations, Mike Robledo and Sandra, on your wedding in Cancun. I'll be out there. Hopefully our next guest will be Guardrail Dave, and maybe another little personality that I can't divulge right now, but it's all fun. Folks, thank you for being a part of the podcast. I'm Joe Sebergandio, and we're out.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Minibike Show.